Welcome to our Poland Weekly Business Focus program. Today, very important and very engaging topic because we're going to talk about e-mobility and the European-Chinese competition in this regard. I think the topic that is very up to date, and I'm really my pleasure to meet today in our studio two experts, Filip Materek, Senior Battery Consultant, and Junhyuk Choi, Project Manager, both from Alexec Consulting, International Management Consulting with a focus on automotive, EV battery, and e-mobility. Good morning, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hey Sylwia, thanks for having us.
Yes, I think we have so much to talk today because I think apart from the policy-making perspective, news stories, something what is happening between European Union and China in terms of, strategies and policies, I think a lot to discuss. But maybe before we'll deep dive into the specific topics regarding the competition or maybe collaboration, let's start with the bigger picture. Filip, maybe a question to you. How is the current landscape of the electric car market overall nowadays? How would you define it?
Yeah, so I would say the overall EV market have been established around 12 years ago with the premiere of Tesla Roadster. But for the last 4 or 5 years, there was a significant growth on the market, specifically in European and Chinese region, followed by United States. Last 4 years after the pandemic started were really critical for this sector because actually the ramp up of the new electric vehicle sales really increased. So last year for 2023 there were in total 14 millions of electrified vehicles. Electrified, I mean fully battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. With also quite big battery inside, not talking about other hybrids. And this accounted for, as I believe, 18% of total new vehicles shares. Mm-hmm. And this is global perspective. 95% of those vehicles were sold in China, Europe, and United States. And the rest of them in South America and India. Mm-hmm. China is currently leading the way, but the discussion will get more interesting as we go into it, as they already achieved 40% of new vehicles sales shares to be EVs. Mm-hmm. They follow very much Norway, which is a pinnacle in the European region, which already has like 90% of new vehicles sales to be electrified.
Mm-hmm. And actually, we talk a lot about China, obviously also here in Europe, also here in Poland, but what stands actually behind such a success of China in this regard on this market?
Definitely what we will be talking about is the competitive advantage that Chinese EV manufacturers and also companies from the whole battery value chain have. In comparison to European and American players. First and the most important point is that they target the needs of customer by bringing the prices of electric vehicles down. And to make that, Chinese manufacturers have actually changed the technology to be developed for the EVs. Usually, and in Europe, we have plenty of battery production facilities already focusing on the NMC batteries, which are NMC stands for nickel, manganese, cobalt. And those batteries were developed because of their higher energy density. And initially, they addressed the range anxiety of those vehicles. And this was the former idea. But now, you can see the new electric vehicles prices in comparison to internal combustion engines are much higher, and currently there is a slowdown on the market. That's why, backing to what I mentioned, Chinese have developed a new battery chemistry called LFP, which stands for lithium iron phosphate, which contains less critical minerals like nickel, cobalt, and manganese. They are not included in there. And they are cheaper to produce, therefore the vehicles are cheaper. Mm-hmm. Just one interesting fact maybe, even in Europe region, I would say 20% of electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles, were imported from China already in the last year.
Okay, that might be a surprise. And looking from the strategic point of view, because of course, on the one, looking from the perspective of the customers, you explained the way, but also it was China's strategic step toward a mobility sector, right? So if you can tell us a few words about this as well.
I think it's from government-wise, China was supporting to whole EV industry from EV battery to the EV automotive and the battery and up to the EV raw materials, as we already discussed, like a full value chain. And China, what they did in the first is to securing the upstream of the electric vehicle. So upstream here is securing the resources of the minerals and also securing the refining this all the raw materials. And they already succeeded to secure all these raw material suppliers from the Africa and also from Southeast Asia and also in the Latin America. And due to this success of the securing the upstream from the government and also by the battery supplier, they could easily develop or advance to the price competitiveness since they can already supply all these materials by their own. And also from government, there was a very recent report that for over the 15 years, that government already supported this EV industry more than $230 billion. And this is which is quite huge amount. And what is very interesting, it's a very conservative number. So it is, we can say minimum $230 billion were subsidized to the suppliers or to the companies. So they could already develop, as Philip already mentioned, this NMC or LFP and all other advanced technologies in advance compared to other European companies.
Because I understand also the big share of those money went into the R&D and creating their own technologies.
Yes, it's a very simple comparison also to the Korea. Like there are many big companies, like three big players, LG, Samsung, and SDI. The R&D, the number of R&D personnel in these three companies and compared to China, it's more than 4 times more than Korea also. So it's more than, I think BYD company itself has more than 100,000 battery R&D members in the company.
Okay, quite impressive numbers.
Yes.
Okay, and do you think, we talked about, of course, the price in terms of the factor which is critical from the perspective of the consumer. But looking, at this perspective, why Chinese cars, apart from being much cheaper, gain so much attention in Europe from the European customers?
I would say it's a change of the mind from Chinese companies because for internal combustion engine, they have to focus on the robustness of the engine instead of other design. But for EV, once you secure already the batteries, then you can focus on other design of the car and also interface or other entertainment system for in the car. This kind of advantages already succeeded to the customers, so they think the Chinese EV market or EV electric vehicles are also attractive and also price competitive compared to other European cars.
What we can also read in media is that actually, next to the price, I think something that is gaining attention is also the fact that the design is much better than it used to be. So is it also the factor that we can say that maybe Chinese made their lesson?
I can say they made also lessons, and when I also myself experienced in the electric vehicles, the interface or the interior design in China is much more modern, became more modern than in the past. For example, the size of the screen and also other systems, for example, Netflix or YouTube, all other systems are of course, European cars also have this system, but it doesn't say it's better or worse, but they have faster this interaction between this Netflix and all these programs.
So user experience in total is better.
I would say there is also one important factor in addition to the quality of the product that Chinese really started to make with the high quality products, I would say. The very important point is that in the past where the lithium-ion batteries were produced in a large scale, they were very often outsourced to the Southeast Asia and China to produce them for like our portable devices, etc. And this was a huge gain in experience and knowledge for also Chinese OEMs, because what we can see on the market is that actually it's easier for the battery manufacturers to evolve into automotive maker, EV automotive maker, because the battery is a very critical component in the whole system. And automotive as a whole, the chassis, the infotainment, etc., it's already well developed throughout the world. There have been a lot of knowledge sharing, but for battery business it was a bit different. That's why BYD have increased so much on the market with their sales shares, because they originated from the battery manufacturing.
Yes, and actually we talk about the products, but at the end you mentioned BYD, we talk about the brand. They are official sponsor of Euro 2024. It also is a big step forward. I mean, thinking about electric vehicles, not as a product, but as a brand, that's also quite significant in terms of what they want to achieve here in Europe, for example, yes? I understand that they are much more visible, and probably they also invest in the brand recognition, not only being as a producer, but also as a brand, which makes a difference.
They put a lot of focus now on the globalization strategy of their products and of their brand, and of course marketing goes along. So they decided to make this huge step with sponsoring actually Euro 2024. And this actually impacts that the brand itself. I think it's perceived better by regular consumers that get to know the brand better, and they can actually test on their own. Later, what we touched, that the quality of those vehicles, it's already nice.
And if we look at the figures, I mean, the number of Chinese imported cars, electric cars in Europe is, and in United States as well, is growing, right?
Yes, a lot. But I mentioned before, almost 500,000 of new electric vehicles last year sold in Europe were imported from China. But 60% of those vehicles were US brands that localized their manufacturing in China due to the cost reasons, cost reduction reasons.
That's a difference.
That's a difference also. But the share of only Chinese brands in the European and US markets is anyway growing in a rapid pace.
And of course, when we look at the European markets, at least, we know that, the growth of this sector from the consumer perspective, the share of the sales of the new cars was also incentivized. Yes? So incentives and policies, regulations were a very important part of this success. At least if we look at the Western countries, in the Nordics, yes, in the Netherlands, the incentives were a critical part of actually making those cars available for the consumers. I'm wondering from the perspective of China, their policies, we mentioned, of course, funding, but any other policies or incentives that they offered on the market that were also speeding up and driving the market forward?
I think it's very well known that Chinese government offered a lot of incentives to not only to the companies, but also to the consumers who were trying to buy electric vehicles. And I think this facilitated in the Chinese domestic market that the share of the EV electric vehicle sales are getting bigger and bigger due to this incentive and the support from the China. And also, as well as not only for this incentive, but also the price of the electricity for the charging is much cheaper compared to other Europe or in USA, because it's also a matter of the economic scale. And they are providing more cheaper electric charging price compared to the oil for the internal combustion engines. And that is also one of the reasons that Chinese government support electric vehicles booming within the China. And now they are turning to their attention to the USA and also to the Europe side.
I think this dependence on oil, not dependence on oil, was also one of the factors that make it quite important strategic part of the development of the economy. I remember the data maybe from 7 years ago. And, there was such an enthusiasm how many electric vehicles there are in China compared to United States. But, oil is a significant factor, where you put your money, yes?
Yes.
I would add also to this one thing that I just reminded myself. So in addition to government overall government support. There were local incentives also for the companies from the battery value chain. And I just read recently that the approach was to create local clusters of companies that can create a full battery value chain from raw material through battery cell manufacturing, battery system manufacturing, and electric vehicle manufacturing. And within smaller regions, the companies could cooperate better. That increased the speed of the development, I would say. And I don't know the exact numbers, but I believe the local governments, regional governments also supported with some incentives to those companies.
Yeah. And also additionally here, they were focusing on the, not consumption, but they were focusing on the production. So their strategy was to focus on the overproduction to secure the market share in China and also in the global wise. And then they started to distribute this overproduction capacity also worldwide, so they can sell much more easier and with more cheaper price.
Mm-hmm. And from the perspective of Europe, yeah, because now we talked so much about advantages of the Chinese car. Obviously, there are many. But for European markets, where automotive industry itself is also investing a lot of money into transforming automotive industry to be more electric, that's a huge competition. And of course, the price also, for how much you can buy the Chinese car compared to the European one is also a significant difference. So how Europe is looking at it, what type of steps is the European Union taking toward this competition, and whether it's really only a competition or we can gain something out of this as well as the European market?
So very recently there were announced new higher tariffs on electric vehicles from China. And it was announced not only by a European Commission, but also by the Biden-Harris administration in the US. Europe made these tariffs a bit smaller than in US, which they addressed really high tariffs. I believe 100% on electric vehicles imported from China to US. Whereas in Europe, those tariffs are ranging from 17% to 38% on Chinese electric vehicles. In addition to 10% of tariff of duty that was already introduced several years ago. This range of the height of the tariff is related to the cooperation of Chinese brands with EU policies according to this subsidy investigation that was done on Chinese manufacturers, because they offered those vehicles at the prices that were too competitive. The idea of those tariffs is to equal the prices of Chinese vehicles and European ones to save the local market, because to be honest, Europe have a really strong history within the automotive industry.
It's a huge employer as well, not only looking at the business side, but also on the labor market side, right?
Yeah. And it's not only about the brands, but also about sub-brands or about the companies that are used for outsourcing some services. So the engagement in the automotive industry in Europe is huge. And to save those positions, those jobs, and those brands, this is one of the decisions that Europe decided to make. But in my opinion, and in opinion of several European brands, it's not a very good approach, because it can create this feeling of competitiveness even more. And actually, when we look at the Chinese market, European brands gained quite a popularity there. And in order to enter the new market, they were not incentivized. However, they were asked to create like joint ventures with Chinese companies to establish local production in China. And this developed quite well, I would say, throughout the years. Mm-hmm. VW is in China, BMW is in China, Mercedes is in China. And again, touching upon the statistics, 30% of vehicles of those three brands that I mentioned are only in China. Mm-hmm. The approach could be a bit different, because this poses a significant risk to the relationship with Chinese companies.
But on the other hand, don't you think, because I also found such an argument that will also actually motivate more Chinese manufacturers to actually produce in Europe. And I believe that, from the perspective of the CE region, that usually is quite attractive for nearshoring. Is it an argument in the discussion that actually this move can actually make Chinese companies to invest into their plants here in Europe?
I think it's already started and it's already in construction and in operation. For example, in Germany, the biggest cell manufacturer, CATL, is already in start of the production since 2-3 years. And also soon in Hungary region, there will be also BYD, the largest car maker. And also CATL is trying to expand their production in Hungary. And also it's a strategical decision. They also decided to build this factory near where the BMW factories are. So BMW, CATL will be located in the similar direction to have also more joint cooperation between their side. As Filip also said, the European policies is going towards against Chinese through the increase of the tariff. But from the company-wise, they are trying to more cooperate with the Chinese companies to gain more competitiveness, not to have competition with them.
And, we talk about that potentially that can also, boost the potential of the European market. So I'm wondering, if you observe what's been happening over the last few years, and probably there are some processes and discussions in a way, what type of impact it will have or potentially it might have on the European market? Maybe from the business perspective, labor market perspective, but also at the end from the consumer perspective.
I think I couldn't say first from the European automotive perspective. Now, due to the policies, also not only from the tariff, but also for internal combustion engine sales ban in 10 years almost, and also this carbonate net zero policies in 2050, they have to increase their portfolio in the EV section. And already Chinese EV makers have the higher advantages or higher market share in this EV market. And at the same time now European traditional heritage automotive companies have to also follow their strategic decision. So this is so for the European OEM, now they, as Filip already explained, they are trying to cooperate with the Chinese automakers. But at the same time, this will be a very important decision for European automotive brands, how they will react in this period, whether they will go against China and they will compete with the Chinese market, or they want to cooperate with Chinese market just to survive or to learn how they were operating and to change their mindset. And this will be the very important decision within 5 or 10 years from European automotive perspective.
Let's look now on the Polish perspective, yes, in this, because of course it seems that over last few years, Poland is becoming a very important player, especially in terms of the value chain and batteries. So how can Poland gain, lose? What's your opinion about where Poland stands in all those discussions between European Union and China?
Poland is already quite well positioned in the battery value chain. Not
I think top 3, yes.
I know statistics from 2022. Poland was back then the second largest manufacturer of batteries for electric vehicles. It was thanks to the LG Energy Solution facility next to Wrocław, which is now also expanding. But I think we lost the second place already as a country manufacturing batteries.
So who is second now?
Either Hungary or I would say US is ramping up due to Tesla increasing production and many projects happening there. However, it's not only about producing batteries, but also about producing components for the batteries. And here already some Chinese companies have localized their factories in Poland, and not only Chinese, also Korean companies and Japanese companies localized here to produce components like electrolyte for the batteries or cathode active materials, which are the very critical component of batteries. Those companies also invest in Poland in the recycling of the battery materials already, like POSCO Group from Korea. It's a lot of activities going on already in Poland. And I would say this is specifically due to the strategic position of Poland as a country to the very big market which Europe is, especially Western Europe for the EV market, but also already quite a well-developed country with well-educated people that serve as a really good labor for the production of those components, which is still cheaper than the
Cost
Western.
effective, yeah.
Yeah.
I recently read the statement of BYD. Also, they opened an office here in Poland for import and sales. Yes, not production, but also one of the factors what we are still a big market as a consumer market, and with still huge space to wrap up in terms of the purchasing probably e-cars. Yes. We still are, looking at the statistic. I think Poland is, month to month it's increasing, but still I think the price is problematic for many consumers to purchase an electric vehicle.
But coming back to the last question, this is already a very important impact that has been done to European market, that Chinese already offered so cheap cars that now the perspective of the industry has changed from ramping up the production of the current technology. In Europe, it's mostly NMC, what I mentioned, which is, to be honest, too expensive at this moment because the Chinese brands verified. People want to have cheaper electric vehicles. And this will now increase the development of the cheaper electric vehicles, I believe. And this will be a huge impact. And this can be achieved also through the cooperation, not competition.
Yes. And I think there is a kind of price comparison between European OEMs and Chinese OEMs. There is a segment C, like a middle-sized vehicle, and segment D, or around 10 to 15 vehicles we already have compared. And European OEM segment C price is around 50,000 euros, and segment D vehicles is around 60,000 euros. And the Chinese segment C is near 30,000 euros. So it's already 20,000 euros different. And also segment D is also 50,000 euros. So even 10,000 euros more cheaper than European brands. That's why Chinese having the lead because of the price competitiveness, and also Europeans also trying to copy or trying to follow what Chinese already achieved.
But I believe that actually investing in new technology is quite a big step also in terms of financial resources, isn't it?
That's why I also said this will be, for European heritage OEM, this will be a very important decision because now they are already having some minus because of the lower sales in the EV market, and they have to now produce or expand more portfolio for them for the EV production.
I think there are more decisions important because now we talk about new mobility because hydrogen also is in the game. So
Yes.
I don't think it's only about talking about e-vehicles.
Yes.
So I think it's much diverse options that you have to choose, and of course investing in one line. That's already a key significant investment in terms of financials.
And also one thing very interesting is European OEM, as Filip already mentioned, now they are focusing on also cut off their cost. Why is it so expensive compared to China? Where it is located? Is it because of the development or because of the labor cost or because of the component or because of we are developing too long time like our traditional internal combustion engine? And they are now they are now conducting that kind of analysis internally to become more competitive with the Chinese EV.
But do you think that the amount of number of regulations in European Union is a stopper a little bit in this regard, or in this sector not really? Because we can see now, sometimes we can hear that now China has a space for innovations and we have a huge space for regulations, yes? And is it a case also here when we talk about this market?
My personal opinion, for cost reduction, regulation is actually plays a separate role. Because now, for example, Stellantis, the also very big car maker, trying to expand their business, not in Europe, but trying to expand their business towards North Africa and also South America, because the labor cost and the development and price is very cheaper than Europe itself. That's why I think regulation plays a kind of little bit different role in terms of their development in this sector.
So it's more the protection of the market, labor market in principle.
Yes. And this amount of democracy that we have in Europe, which causes the longer time of taking decisions. Also significantly increases the development time of new vehicles on the market, which is rather more related syndrome than the cost effectiveness to regulations.
So there's also kind of some analysis of the development speed of the European OEM and Chinese OEM. And European OEMs are developing one new EV vehicles more than 40 to 50 months, like 4 years or 5 years. And China are developing or achieved already to develop a new vehicle within 2 years and the maximum 30 months, within 30 months, so 2.5 years. So already this kind of development speed differs the introduction of the new vehicles into the market.
Okay, so let's maybe go, before we'll make a summary, I would like to come back a little bit also on to Poland itself, yes, because looking at the market, how does it play? Of course, the position is, nothing is for granted, yes, we also see developments in other countries. So what would be the best strategy for Poland? I mean, on one hand, of course, we are in the supply chain, we are a big player in terms of the electric batteries, but is there a way to develop and grow even better in this regard, in maybe on the wider scale than just, I don't know, stick to the battery, or maybe that's good enough for Poland? How would you see it in the perfect scenario, that what could Poland actually gain more?
Poland is already well positioned. Many new companies are localizing in Poland because of the well-experienced labor that they can basically...
And strong automotive industry historically, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes. And one of the reasons to achieve that is cooperation also with the more experienced countries like China, which takes us to the point of Isera, which is our Polish product, hopefully to be soon available on the roads. And Isera is currently trying to maintain the contract with the Geely group, which is a Chinese manufacturer of OEMs. Actually, Geely owns a lot of brands for EV production, and Isera is an enabler for them to have another production capacity in Europe, and we can benefit of this because we can bring the technology of Chinese, which is cheaper, which we know consumers will more likely to buy because of that, and the know-how which we can use to train even more of our employees, our Polish young people, and also older people that are transitioning from the regular automotive business, which is a huge advantage and opportunity for Poland.
So this is actually a perfect example of a cooperation in terms of keeping your national brand, or actually creating your national brand, but with a support of in this regard, Chinese companies. Yeah. So you believe in this project of Isera?
We keep our fingers crossed for
because
Isera.
The plant is already, I mean, the space for the plant is already secured, right? So actually it seems that the process is going on.
Yes, I think they are really close to start the construction work for this Jaworzno facility. I recently heard from CTO of Isera during one of the conferences that start production date of Isera, or actually of the vehicles in this facility, is set to be 2026. So 2 years from now, quite soon, right?
With what capacity?
I think the final capacity will be at the level of 300,000 vehicles per year. Initially, it can be 100,000 vehicles. And Isera will be only an amount, a smaller amount of the total, because it's also about the recognition of the brand. The brand is new, it will be mostly for Polish people, but Geely has more ambitious plans to conquer the Europe region, right?
But with their own production at the same facility?
Of course, yes. As Geely also owns Volvo and Polestar, the two European brands originated in Sweden, they will be also localized probably in this factory in Jaworzno.
So that's actually a huge potential from the perspective of the labor market, using the know-how and using skilled people who are now still in the traditional automotive industry. And because actually this location will be in the region where it's, in terms of the automotive, it's the strongest component of the local economy.
Yes.
Well, so to summarize, how would you see the positive scenario? I think I've read something interesting after the economic forum in Davos, that actually looking at the competition and cooperation, we used to think about it in a way that, it's on the two opposite sides. But nowadays, we should actually think about those two things that actually should coexist. So do you think that's the case for the e-mobility for the future in terms of the Chinese and European cooperation? And competition at the same time?
I think in a very short way, this competition and this cooperation will never get separated, but will go in the same direction over years and years, because there will be new regulation from Europe and also new regulation from China. But anyway, in the end, companies must survive. So apart from the regulation, they have to survive. So this competition and cooperation will exist, but it's a matter of how they will compete and how they cooperate.
Okay. And we can see that actually, looking at the negotiations in the last months on the tariffs, it seems that there is a potential to make it quite positive at the end of the day.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's a great one-liner to summarize our discussion. I think it's also a matter of the consumers that, there were other regulations, of course, that, and strategic decisions that we want to switch to new mobility from the traditional automotive sector, which I think that at the end of the day, if that for the consumers, one of the key factors to make a decision about the purchase of a new car is a price, then I think it's our common goal to make those cars affordable, yes, and the price is critical, so we can learn from the Chinese companies how to adjust the price to the potential and the needs of the consumers.
But never give up on the European brands that we already have.
Local patriotism is always a key of a success.
I think they will also still survive, as we said. It's a
There are ways to do it, to combine both these,
Yes, exactly.
topics. Exactly. Thank you very much. I think very, very interesting and quite optimistic. I think that when we started, I thought that it would be more about, really almost like a trade war. But at the end of the day, we came up with a quite positive conclusion. So let's hope that it will keep like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll keep us posted, on the performance. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylwia.